The unexpected hero. The status light on Sarah Chen's EnviroSleep pod blinked from red to green, accompanied by a soft chime. With a hiss, the transparent canopy slid open, releasing a wisp of cryo vapor into the dimly lit chamber. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the soft blue glow of the research station's night cycle illumination. As consciousness flooded back, so did the crushing reality of her situation. Stranded on Research Outpost Epsilon, orbiting a gas giant in a system so remote it didn't even have a proper name. Just an alphanumeric designation that looked more like a password than a place. XR2209. Home sweet home for the past 3 years. Sarah swung her legs over the side of the pod, wincing as her bare feet touched the cold metal floor. She'd volunteered for this assignment fresh out of the Terran Academy of Xenobiology, fueled by dreams of groundbreaking discoveries and interstellar adventure. The reality had been somewhat less glamorous. Endless days of analyzing microbial samples from the gas giant's upper atmosphere, punctuated by long stretches of EnviroSleep to conserve resources. "Good morning, Dr. Chen," chirped the station's AI, its voice emanating from hidden speakers. "Current station time is 700 hours. No priority messages received during your sleep cycle." Sarah grunted in acknowledgement, shuffling towards the tiny hygiene unit attached to her quarters. "Thanks, AI. Any exciting developments in the thrilling world of extraterrestrial microbiology while I was out?" There was a pause, as if the AI was genuinely considering the question. "Negative, Dr. Chen. All automated sample collection and analysis proceeded within expected parameters." "Fantastic," Sarah muttered, splashing cold water on her face. She stared at her reflection in the small mirror above the sink. At 28, she still looked young, but there was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there when she'd first arrived on Epsilon. Another day in paradise. As she pulled on her standard-issue jumpsuit, Sarah allowed herself a moment of self-pity. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. By now, she should have made some groundbreaking discovery, something to justify the years of isolation and loneliness. Instead, she had volumes of data on unremarkable extremophiles and a growing sense that she'd made a terrible mistake. The station's mess unit, little more than a glorified vending machine, dispensed a lukewarm cup of synthetic coffee and a nutrition bar. Sarah grimaced as she bit into the bar, its taste and texture reminiscent of sweetened cardboard. "Dr. Chen." Aria's voice interrupted her less than gourmet breakfast. "I'm detecting an unscheduled approach to the station. A small craft of unknown configuration." Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. "What? That's impossible. We're light years from any established trade routes." She rushed to the station's small command center, bringing up the external sensor feeds on the main view screen. Sure enough, a sleek, silvery vessel was rapidly closing in on Epsilon. Its design was like nothing Sarah had ever seen. All smooth curves and iridescent surfaces that seemed to shift and ripple as she watched. "RIA, are you picking up any communication attempts?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. This was it. First contact with a previously unknown spacefaring species. The discovery that would make her years of isolation worth it. "Negative, Dr. Chen. However, the vessel appears to be in distress. I'm detecting fluctuations in its power signature consistent with severe system damage." Sarah's excitement quickly gave way to concern. "Can we bring it in? Do we have a docking bay large enough?" "Affirmative. Emergency protocols authorize use of the primary sample retrieval bay for rescue operations." Sarah nodded, her training kicking in despite the surreal nature of the situation. "All right, let's do it. Initiate docking procedures and prep the med bay. Just in case." The next few minutes were a blur of activity as Sarah rushed to prepare for her unexpected guests. As the alien craft eased into the retrieval bay, she stood nervously by the airlock, medkit in hand, unsure of what to expect. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the inner airlock door slid open. Sarah held her breath, eyes wide as she caught her first glimpse of the ship's occupant. The alien that stumbled through the airlock was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen, even in the extensive xenobiology databases she'd studied. He, stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a body that seemed to be composed of translucent, crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. Multiple limbs, Sarah counted 6, moved with an unsettling fluidity, as if they weren't constrained by joints or bones. The alien's head was a cluster of shimmering faceted orbs that Sarah assumed functioned as sensory organs. As it turned towards her, she felt a wave of dizziness, as if the very sight of the creature was overwhelming her human senses. "Help," a voice echoed in Sarah's mind, though the alien had no visible mouth. "Danger. Pursuit. Hide." Before Sarah could respond, the alien collapsed, its crystalline body clattering against the metal floor of the airlock. The pulsing light within it flickered erratically. Sarah snapped out of her stunned state, rushing forward with the medkit. I need full spectrum analysis. Vital signs, atmospheric requirements, anything you can give me." As she knelt beside the alien, her scientific training warring with sheer awe, Sarah realized that her life had just become far more complicated and far more interesting than she could have ever imagined. "Anomalous energy readings detected," Araya reported. "The alien's body appears to be generating a quantum field unlike anything in our databases." Sarah's mind raced. Whatever this creature was, wherever it had come from, it was far beyond the scope of her experience. But she was a scientist, trained to adapt, to observe, to learn. And right now, this alien needed her help. "Hang on," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if the creature could hear or understand her. "I've got you. You're safe now." As she began to assess the alien's condition, using equipment designed for human physiology on a being that defied categorization, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of terror and exhilaration. This was what she'd come out here for: the unknown, the extraordinary. The universe, it seemed, had finally decided to give Dr. Sarah Chen the adventure she'd been longing for. But as the alien's words echoed in her mind, danger, pursuit, hide, she realized that this adventure might be more than she'd bargained for. Little did Sarah know, as she worked feverishly to stabilize her unexpected patient, that she was about to be thrust into a conflict that would not only change her life, but potentially reshape the balance of power in the galaxy itself. The lonely research station, once a symbol of isolation and frustrated ambition, had suddenly become ground zero for a cosmic drama. And Sarah Chen, the disillusioned xenobiologist from Earth, was about to discover strengths and capabilities she never knew she possessed. As the alien's crystalline body pulsed weakly beneath her hands, Sarah made a silent vow. Whatever was coming, whatever dangers this creature was fleeing, she would face them. Not just for the sake of scientific discovery, but because it was the right thing to do. The adventure she dreamed of had arrived. Now she just had to survive it. Crisis on Novus Prime. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her brow, her eyes fixed on the alien's pulsating crystalline form. After hours of frantic work, she'd managed to stabilize its condition, though she was far from understanding the intricacies of its biology. The creature lay motionless on the makeshift examination table, its inner light now steady but dim. Any luck deciphering its language?" Sarah asked, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Negative, Dr. Chen," the eye replied. "The alien's method of communication appears to be based on quantum entanglement principles. Our systems are not equipped to process such transmissions fully." Sarah sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Of course not. That would be too easy." A soft chime from the console interrupted her thoughts. "Dr. Chen, I'm detecting multiple signals approaching the station. Configuration matches known Galactic Consortium peacekeeping vessels." Sarah's heart raced. The Galactic Consortium, humanity's introduction to the wider galactic community, and not always a friendly one. Peaceful was a relative term when it came to the consortium's methods. Before she could formulate a response, the alien stirred. its faceted sensory clusters oriented toward Sarah, and once again, she felt the disorienting sensation of a voice in her mind. Gratitude. Danger still comes. Must reach Novus Prime. Crisis imminent. Sarah blinked, trying to process the fragmented message. Novus Prime. I've never heard of it. And what crisis? The alien's body shimmered, and suddenly, a holographic projection filled the room. Sarah gasped as she found herself surrounded by the image of a breathtaking alien world. Towering crystal spires reached towards a violet sky, while beings similar to her patient moved gracefully through floating gardens. Home, the alien's voice echoed in her mind. Dying. Core instability. Need human innovation. The beauty of the projection was marred by ominous cracks appearing in the crystalline structures. In the planet's core, Sarah could see a pulsing mass of energy growing dangerously unstable. You need our help to save your world, Sarah whispered, the magnitude of the situation dawning on her. The alien's affirmation came as a wave of emotion rather than words. Determination, hope, and an underlying current of fear. The moment was shattered by Aria's urgent announcement. Dr. Chen, consortium vessels are hailing us. They're demanding immediate surrender of the alien entity. Sarah's mind raced. The consortium's arrival, the aliens' plea for help, the impending destruction of an entire world. It was all too much. But as she looked at the weakened being before her, she knew she couldn't simply hand it over. Aria, send the consortium a message. Tell them. She paused, hardly believing what she was about to say. Tell them Dr. Sarah Chen respectfully declines their request and is currently engaged in a priority xenobiological research mission. Message sent, Dr. Chen. However, I must advise you that this action violates multiple consortium protocols. Sarah managed a grim smile. Noted. Now, plot us a course to Novus Prime, wherever the hell that is. The alien's surprise and gratitude washed over her like a warm wave. Brave human. Coordinates transmitted. Time short. As Sarah rushed to prep the station's small emergency shuttle, she couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation. 3 years of mind-numbing routine, and now she was about to go on the run from the Galactic Consortium to save an alien world. The shuttle, designed for short exploratory trips to the gas giant's upper atmosphere, groaned in protest as Sarah pushed it to its limits. Behind them, the research station grew smaller, a lonely outpost now surrounded by the sleek, predatory forms of consortium ships. They're charging weapons, Aria reported, its synthetic voice somehow conveying urgency. Sarah gritted her teeth, hands dancing over the controls. Divert all power to engines and aft shields. Let's see if those flight simulator sessions were worth anything. The shuttle lurched forward, narrowly avoiding the first volley of consortium fire. Sarah's stomach churned as she executed a series of evasive maneuvers that the small craft was never designed to perform. Beside her, the alien had managed to pull itself into the co-pilot's seat. Its crystalline limbs interfaced with the shuttle's systems in ways Sarah couldn't begin to comprehend. Suddenly, the view screen lit up with a new set of coordinates. Shortcut, the alien's voice whispered in her mind. Dangerous, but necessary. Sarah nodded, not trusting herself to speak as she guided the shuttle towards what looked like a swirling vortex of energy that had appeared out of nowhere. As they plunged into the vortex, Sarah's world exploded into a cacophony of light and sensation. It felt like every atom of her body was being pulled apart and reassembled. She screamed, but no sound escaped her lips in this realm beyond normal space and time. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The shuttle emerged into real space with a violent shudder. Sarah blinked, trying to orient herself. The gas giant and the consortium ships were gone. Instead, a beautiful but clearly dying world filled the view screen. Novus Prime, the alien confirmed, its mental voice tinged with sorrow. As they descended through the violet atmosphere, Sarah could see the devastation firsthand. The once majestic crystal spires were crumbling, and fissures snaked across the planet's surface, pulsing with ominous energy. They landed in what appeared to be a vast plaza, now largely empty save for a group of aliens similar to Sarah's companion. As the shuttle's hatch opened, Sarah felt the oppressive heat and tasted something metallic in the air. Radiation, she realized with a start. The planet's core wasn't just unstable, it was tearing itself apart. The alien led Sarah towards the waiting group, its movements now more fluid in its native environment. One of the aliens stepped forward, its faceted sensory clusters oriented towards Sarah. Human. A chorus of mental voices addressed her. You risk much to come here. Our gratitude is beyond expression. But we fear you have arrived too late. Novus Prime's core will reach critical instability within hours. Our scientists have failed to find a solution. Sarah squared her shoulders, years of scientific training kicking in despite the surreal situation. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, xenobiologist. I may not know much about planetary cores, but I'm here to help in any way I can. Show me what you've tried so far. As the aliens led her to their scientific complex, Sarah's mind whirled with possibilities. She was no geologist or physicist, but she had a human's capacity for lateral thinking and improvisation, qualities that had served her species well in their rapid ascent to the stars. The complex was a marvel of crystalline technology, but many of the structures were already showing signs of stress. Holographic displays showed the planet's deteriorating core in real time, an angry swirl of energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics as Sarah understood them. The core's unique properties allowed our civilization to flourish, one of the alien scientists explained. But now, those same properties threaten to tear our world apart. We've tried to stabilize it using our most advanced quantum field generators, but nothing has worked. Sarah studied the displays, her brow furrowed in concentration. Something about the energy pattern seemed familiar, tugging at the edges of her memory. Then it hit her, the way the alien's body had pulsed when it was injured, the quantum fields it had generated. Your bodies, she said, excitement building in her voice. They're connected to the planet's core somehow, aren't they? You're not just inhabitants of this world. You're part of it. The alien's surprise rippled through the mental link. Yes, but how could this help us? Sarah's mind raced, piecing together a desperate plan. What if we use that connection? Create a planet-wide network, with every one of your people acting as a node. Combine that with your quantum field technology, and we might be able to stabilize the core from the outside in. The alien scientists conferred rapidly, their bodies shimmering with agitation and hope. It's never been attempted on this scale, one of them said. The strain on our people would be immense. Do we have a choice? Sarah countered. It's this or watch your world die. As the aliens began to implement Sarah's plan, she felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. She was a xenobiologist, for crying out loud, not a savior of worlds. And yet, here she was, coordinating a last-ditch effort to save an entire civilization. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Sarah found herself at the heart of the operation, using her outsider's perspective to spot patterns and suggest adjustments that the aliens, for all their advanced technology, had overlooked. As the planet shuddered around them, Sarah watched the holographic displays with bated breath. The core's erratic energy was slowly, painfully, being brought under control. But would it be enough? A violent tremor shook the complex, and Sarah stumbled, nearly falling. One of the aliens steadied her with a crystalline limb. The final phase approaches, it said, its mental voice strained. Everything depends on the next few moments. Sarah nodded, her throat too tight to speak. As she watched the aliens link themselves into a vast, planet-spanning network, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of true purpose, of being exactly where she needed to be. Whatever happened next, she knew that this moment of cooperation between species, this desperate bid to save a world, was what she had always been meant for. As the fate of Novus Prime hung in the balance, Sarah Chen, once a lonely researcher on a forgotten outpost, stood tall. She was human, yes, but now she was something more. A bridge between worlds, a catalyst for the impossible. And as the final surge of energy pulsed through the alien network, Sarah closed her eyes and dared to hope. Against all odds, the air crackled with energy as the planet-wide network of crystalline beings pulsed in unison. Sarah Chen stood at the center of the alien command complex, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of Novus Prime's core. The angry swirl of destructive energy was slowly, painfully being contained, but the strain on the planet and its inhabitants was immense. "It's working," Sarah breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "We're actually doing it." The alien scientist beside her, the one she'd mentally dubbed Facet for its particularly intricate sensory cluster, rippled with a mixture of hope and concern. "Yes, but the strain on our people is reaching critical levels. We cannot maintain this indefinitely." As if to emphasize the point, a violent tremor shook the complex. Cracks spider-webbed across the crystalline floor, and Sarah had to grab onto a nearby console to keep her footing. "We need to find a way to stabilize the core permanently," Sarah said, her mind racing. "This network is buying us time, but it's not a long-term solution." She turned to the alien scientists, noticing how their usually brilliant glow had dimmed with the effort of maintaining the planetary network. "Your people are essentially acting as a massive dampening field, right? What if we could replicate that effect artificially?" Facet's sensory clusters oriented towards her, radiating curiosity. "Explain, human." Sarah gestured to the complex's humming machinery. "Your quantum field generators, they're incredibly advanced, but they're designed to work on a relatively small scale. What if we repurposed them? Created a series of interconnected fields that could envelope the entire core?" The aliens conferred rapidly, their bodies shimmering with excitement and doubt. "The energy requirements would be astronomical," one of them noted, "and the precision needed to maintain such a field." "I know it sounds crazy," Sarah admitted, "but look around. Your world is literally falling apart. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe." Facet seemed to come to a decision. "We will try, but we'll need to reconfigure our entire power grid. And someone will need to manually adjust the field generators as we bring them online. The radiation levels near the core are too high for our kind to approach." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she realized what Facet was implying. "But not too high for a human." "Your biology is more resilient in some ways," Facet confirmed, "but the risk would still be extreme." Sarah took a deep breath, weighing her options. Stay here and almost certainly die when the planet tear itself apart, or take a chance, risking a painful death by radiation, to save an entire world. When she put it that way, there wasn't really a choice at all. "Tell me what I need to do," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The next hour was a blur of activity. Sarah found herself descending into the bowels of the planet, guided by Facet's mental instructions. The heat was oppressive, and her radiation detector was screaming warnings, but she pressed on. As she reached the first of the massive field generators, Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The machine was a marvel of alien engineering, all pulsing light and intricate crystalline structures. But more awe-inspiring was the view beyond it, a vast cavern, at the center of which roiled the planet's core, a maelstrom of energy barely contained by the efforts of the alien network. "Okay," Sarah muttered to herself, wiping sweat from her brow. "No pressure, just saving a planet. All in a day's work for a xenobiologist, right?" She set to work, her hands flying over alien controls that somehow felt intuitive under Facet's guidance. As each generator came online, she could feel the change in the air, a lessening of the oppressive energy that had been tearing the planet apart. But it wasn't enough. As Sarah reached the final generator, a violent tremor shook the cavern. She lost her footing, slamming hard against the crystalline floor. Pain shot through her side. A cracked rib, maybe worse. "Status report." She gasped into her communicator. Facet's mental voice was strained. The network is failing. We cannot maintain it much longer. The final generator must be activated now, or all is lost. Sarah gritted her teeth against the pain and pulled herself up. The generator's control panel swam in her vision. Had the radiation exposure finally caught up with her? She blinked hard, forcing herself to focus. "Come on, Sarah," she muttered. "You didn't come this far to fail now." With trembling hands, she input the final sequence. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like 1,000 crystal glasses shattering at once, energy burst from the generator. Sarah watched in awe as a web of shimmering fields expanded outward, enveloping the roiling core. The wild energies that had threatened to tear Novus Prime apart were slowly, inexorably, brought under control. "It's working." Facet's mental voice was tinged with disbelief and joy. "The core is stabilizing. You've done it, human." Sarah laughed, a sound of pure relief and exhilaration. She'd done it. She'd actually saved a planet. As the realization sank in, so did the extent of her exhaustion. The room spun around her, and she felt herself sinking to the floor. "Hey, Facet," she managed to say, her voice weak. "I might need a little help getting out of here." As consciousness slipped away, Sarah's last thought was that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found the adventure she'd been looking for all along. When Sarah awoke, she found herself in a chamber that seemed to be made entirely of softly glowing crystal. For a moment, she thought she must be dreaming, or dead. Then the aches in her body made themselves known, and she groaned. "The human awakens." Facet's familiar mental voice washed over her. The alien materialized beside her bed, its crystalline form shimmering with what Sarah had come to recognize as concern. "How long was I out?" Sarah asked, her voice hoarse. 3 planetary rotations," Facet replied. "Your body required extensive healing. The radiation exposure was significant." Sarah winced, remembering the blaring warnings on her detector. "But I'm going to be okay." Facet's form rippled in what might have been a shrug. "Your species is remarkably resilient. Our healers have done what they can, but much of your recovery is due to your own biology." Sarah nodded, then froze as the memories came flooding back. The planet. Did it work? Is Novus Prime safe? "See for yourself," Facet said, and suddenly the walls of the chamber became transparent. Sarah gasped. Spread out before her was a vista of breathtaking beauty. The crystalline spires of the alien city gleamed in the light of a violet sun, no longer cracked and crumbling but standing proud and tall. In the distance, she could see verdant gardens floating serenely between the towers. "It's beautiful," Sarah whispered, tears pricking at her eyes. "Thanks to you," Facet said, its mental voice filled with warmth. "You have saved our world, Dr. Sarah Chen. The people of Novus Prime owe you a debt we can never fully repay." Sarah shook her head, embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what anyone would do. Your people did the real work. I just gave a little outside perspective." Facet's form shimmered in what Sarah had come to recognize as amusement. "Your modesty is admirable, but misplaced. You risked everything for a people not your own. Such actions are rare in this galaxy." Before Sarah could respond, a chime sounded, and the chamber's entrance rised open. A group of aliens entered, their crystalline forms more elaborate and adorned than any Sarah had seen before. "The Novus Prime Council," Facet explained. "They wish to speak with you." As the alien leaders approached, Sarah felt a wave of gratitude and respect wash over her. One of them stepped forward, its faceted sensory clusters oriented towards her. "Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth," the alien's mental voice resonated with authority. "You have done our world a great service. We would offer you a place among us, if you wish it. Your insights, your unique perspective, they would be invaluable as we rebuild and look to the future." Sarah blinked, stunned by the offer. A part of her, the part that had dreamed of alien worlds and grand adventures, was sorely tempted. But as she looked out at the alien city, beautiful as it was, she realized something. "I'm honored," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Truly. But I think my place is out there." She gestured towards the starry sky visible beyond the crystal spires. "There are more worlds that might need help, more mysteries to unravel, and someone needs to tell Earth about all of this." The alien council members rippled with what might have been approval. "We understand," the leader said. "Know that you will always have a home on Novus Prime, should you wish to return." As the council departed, Facet turned to Sarah. "What will you do now?" Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. "First, I'm going to finish healing. Then, I think it's time I paid a visit to the Galactic Consortium. They need to know that humanity is ready to play a bigger role in galactic affairs." Facet's form shimmered with what might have been a chuckle. "I do not envy the Consortium officials who will face you, Dr. Chen. I suspect the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." As Sarah looked out at the stars, she couldn't help but agree. Her adventure, it seemed, was just beginning. Escape from the inferno. The relative peace following the stabilization of Novus Prime's core was short-lived. Sarah Chen stood in the crystalline command center, her face illuminated by the ominous red glow of emergency holograms. Facet and the other alien scientists moved in a frenzied dance around her, their usually graceful forms now jagged with stress. "I don't understand," Sarah said, her voice tight with frustration. "We stabilized the core. What's happening now?" Facet's mental voice was tinged with despair. "The stabilization was successful, but it has triggered an unforeseen reaction. The planet's crust is becoming increasingly volatile. Massive tectonic shifts are imminent." As if to punctuate Facet's words, a violent tremor shook the command center. Sarah stumbled, catching herself on a nearby console. Through the transparent walls, she could see fissures snaking across the once pristine crystal landscape. "We need to evacuate," Sarah said, her scientific mind already calculating possibilities. "How many ships do you have? How quickly can we get your people off-world?" The alien council member who had offered Sarah a place on Novus Prime stepped forward, its form dimmed with sorrow. "Our ships were never designed for mass evacuation. We are a peaceful people, Dr. Chen. We never imagined." Sarah bit back a curse. Of course, a civilization that had never known true disaster would be woefully unprepared for one. "Okay, new plan. We need to send out a distress call. Every ship in range, regardless of species or affiliation." Facet's sensory clusters oriented towards her, radiating confusion. "But the Galactic Consortium, they were pursuing you. Surely they would not help." "Maybe not," Sarah admitted, "but we have to try. And there might be others out there willing to lend a hand. We just need to buy enough time to." Her words were cut off by a deafening roar. The command center's view screens filled with images of devastation as entire sections of the planet's crust began to shift and crumble. "Distress signal sent," one of the alien technicians reported. "But our long-range communications array has been damaged. We cannot be certain the message was received." Sarah's mind raced. They couldn't just sit here and wait for help that might never come. "Your shuttlecraft," she said, turning to Facet. "The ones used for atmospheric research. How many do you have?" 17, Facet replied. "But they are not designed for long-distance space travel." "They'll have to do," Sarah said grimly. "We'll load them beyond capacity, use them as lifeboats. But we'll need a larger ship to act as a carrier, something to dock the shuttles to once we're in orbit." The council member's form rippled with sudden realization. "The orbital research station. It's not designed as a carrier, but it could be modified." Sarah nodded, a plan forming in her mind. "Right. We'll need teams working on 3 fronts. One to modify the orbital station, one to prep the shuttles, and one to coordinate the evacuation. Every moment counts, people." As the aliens sprang into action, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at their adaptability. Despite facing the end of their world, they moved with purpose and determination. It reminded her of humanity's own resilience in the face of adversity. The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. Sarah found herself in the thick of it, her xenobiology expertise proving unexpectedly useful as they worked to modify alien tech for purposes it was never intended for. Her hands were raw and bleeding from manipulating the sharp crystalline components, but she barely noticed the pain. As they worked, the planet continued to tear itself apart around them. Entire cities vanished into newly formed chasms, and the once violet sky was now choked with ash and debris. The beauty Sarah had admired just days before was being erased, replaced by a hellish landscape that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of desperate labor, they were ready. The shuttles, now fitted with makeshift life support systems designed to handle the crystalline biology of the Novus Prime inhabitants, were loaded beyond capacity. The orbital station had been hastily retrofitted with docking clamps and additional power systems. As Sarah helped the last group of aliens board a shuttle, Facet approached her. "Dr. Chen, we have a problem. The final shuttle. There's no room for you." Sarah's heart sank, but she forced a smile. "Well, I guess that solves the question of who's going to pilot this thing up to the station, doesn't it?" Facet's form shimmered with distress. But the radiation levels, the shuttle's shielding was not designed for human physiology. The journey through the upper atmosphere alone could be fatal. "We don't have a choice," Sarah said firmly. "Your people need every seat on those shuttles. I'll take my chances." Before Facet could protest further, another tremor rocked the launch bay. Alarms blared as the computer announced imminent structural failure. "Go," Sarah shouted, all but shoving Facet into the shuttle. "I'll be right behind you." As the other shuttles launched, Sarah sprinted to the final craft. Her hands flew over the alien controls, now familiar after hours of modifications. The engines roared to life, and she felt the craft lift off just as the launch bay floor began to crumble beneath it. The ascent was brutal. Sarah's vision swam as G-forces she was never meant to endure pressed her into the pilot's seat. Warnings flashed across the shuttle's displays, radiation levels climbing, hull integrity failing, life support systems fluctuating wildly. Through it all, Sarah gritted her teeth and held on. She thought of Earth, of the family she'd left behind to pursue her dreams of cosmic discovery. She thought of Novus Prime, of the people she'd come to admire in such a short time. She couldn't fail them now. As the shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere, Sarah caught her first glimpse of the orbital station. It was a patchwork monstrosity now, its elegant scientific design marred by the hasty additions needed to accommodate the evacuation. But to Sarah, at that moment, it was the most beautiful sight she'd ever seen. With the last of her strength, Sarah guided the shuttle towards the station's makeshift docking bay. Her vision was blurring, darkness creeping in at the edges, but she forced herself to focus, just a little further. The shuttle slammed into the docking clamps with bone-jarring force. Sarah's head snapped forward, and she tasted blood. But they'd made it. They were docked. As the airlock cycled and Facet's crystalline form appeared, concern radiating from every facet, Sarah managed a weak smile. "See," she mumbled. "Told you I'd be right behind you." Then the darkness that had been threatening finally claimed her, and Sarah Chen, savior of Novus Prime, slipped into unconsciousness. The last thing she heard was Facet's mental voice, tinged with both worry and awe. "Rest now, brave human. Your work is done." But even as oblivion took her, Sarah knew that this was far from over. They had escaped the inferno, yes, but the real challenge, finding a new home for an entire displaced civilization, was just beginning. And somehow, she knew she'd be right in the middle of it all. As the makeshift ark of Novus Prime survivors drifted away from their dying world, the galaxy held its breath, unaware that the actions of one human xenobiologist were about to change everything. Aftermath and revelation. Sarah Chen drifted in and out of consciousness, her dreams a swirling mix of crystalline spires and cosmic explosions. When she finally opened her eyes, she found herself in a makeshift medical bay aboard the orbital station. The steady hum of overtaxed engines vibrated through the deck beneath her. "Welcome back, Dr. Chen." Facet's familiar mental voice washed over her. The alien's crystalline form shimmered at her bedside, radiating relief. Sarah tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that lanced through her body. "How long was I out?" "The evacuation. Did everyone make it?" Facet gently eased her back down. "You've been unconscious for 3 standard cycles. Thanks to your efforts, we managed to evacuate approximately 82% of our population. The losses are significant, but far less than they might have been without your intervention." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of those lost lives. But 82%, that was a victory, given the circumstances. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with determination. "What's our status now?" "We are currently in deep space, well away from the remnants of Novus Prime," Facet explained. "Our makeshift fleet is holding together, but we cannot maintain this arrangement indefinitely. We need to find a new home." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We need to make contact with the galactic community. Surely there must be someone willing to help refugees." She was interrupted by a commotion outside the medical bay. Moments later, the door slid open, revealing one of the alien council members. Its crystalline form pulsed with urgent energy. "Dr. Chen, Facet," it said, its mental voice tinged with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "We've received a transmission. It's from the Galactic Consortium." Sarah felt her heart rate spike. The same consortium that had been pursuing her before all this began. "What do they want?" The council member's form shimmered uncertainly. "They say they've been monitoring the situation. They're offering assistance, and they're specifically asking to speak with you, Dr. Chen." Sarah exchanged a glance with Facet. This could be an opportunity or a trap, but in their current situation, they had little choice but to hear the consortium out. With Facet's help, Sarah made her way to the station's makeshift command center. The large view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of a consortium official. The alien species was unfamiliar to Sarah, its features a blend of avian and reptilian characteristics. "Dr. Sarah Chen," the official said, its voice translated through the station's systems. "You've caused quite a stir in our sector of the galaxy." Sarah straightened as much as her injured body would allow. "If by causing the stir you mean saving an entire civilization from extinction, then yes, I suppose I have." The official's expression was unreadable. "Indeed, your actions on Novus Prime have not gone unnoticed, nor has the unorthodox method of your departure from your research station." Sarah felt a flash of defiance. "I did what I had to do. If you've been monitoring the situation, you know what was at stake." To her surprise, the official's stern demeanor softened slightly. "We do. And that is precisely why I'm contacting you now. Dr. Chen, your actions have forced the consortium to reevaluate its stance on several matters, including humanity's role in galactic affairs." Sarah blinked, caught off guard. "I'm not sure I understand." "For centuries, the consortium has maintained a policy of limited intervention with less advanced species," the official explained. "Humanity, despite its rapid technological progress, was still considered too unpredictable to be fully brought into the galactic community." The official paused, its alien features contorting into what might have been a smile. "But you, Dr. Chen, have demonstrated that perhaps we've been overly cautious. Your innovative thinking, your willingness to risk everything for a people not your own. These are qualities the galaxy sorely needs in these troubled times." Sarah felt her head spinning, and not just from her injuries. "Are you saying the consortium is prepared to offer Earth full membership?" the official confirmed. "And to the people of Novus Prime, we offer sanctuary and assistance in finding a new homeworld." The command center erupted in a cacophony of mental voices as the aliens reacted to the news. Sarah felt tears pricking at her eyes. Tears of relief, of joy, and of the realization that her life would never be the same. "There is, of course, one condition," the official added, silencing the mental chatter. "We need individuals capable of bridging the gap between species, of fostering understanding and cooperation. Dr. Chen, we would like you to serve as humanity's first official ambassador to the Galactic Consortium." Sarah's mouth fell open. She looked at Facet, at the council members, at the screen showing the makeshift fleet carrying the survivors of a world she'd helped save. In that moment, she saw not just the end of one adventure, but the beginning of something far greater. With a deep breath, Sarah turned back to the view screen. "I accept," she said, her voice steady and clear. "On one condition of my own. The people of Novus Prime don't just need a new home. They need a voice in the consortium. If I'm to be humanity's ambassador, then one of them should serve alongside me." The official considered this for a moment, then nodded. "Agreed. Your first official act as ambassador is a wise one, Dr. Chen. We look forward to working with you and your Novus Prime colleague." As the transmission ended, Sarah felt the weight of her new responsibility settling on her shoulders. But it was a weight she was ready to bear. She turned to Facet, a smile spreading across her face. "Well, old friend," she said, "it looks like our adventure is just beginning." Facet's crystalline form shimmered with what Sarah had come to recognize as joy. "Indeed, Ambassador Chen. And I, for one, cannot wait to see where it leads us." As the makeshift fleet set course for consortium space, Sarah Chen looked out at the star-filled void. She thought of Earth, of the message she would soon send home that would change everything. She thought of Novus Prime, of the civilization she'd helped save and the challenges they still faced. And she thought of the vast, unknown galaxy that awaited them all. Whatever came next, Sarah knew one thing for certain. Humanity was ready to take its place among the stars. And she would be there, at the forefront, helping to shape a future brighter than any she could have imagined in her lonely research station just a few short weeks ago. The adventure of a lifetime had ended. The adventure of a species was about to begin.